Alrighty, guys, and welcome back to the Basketball Fix podcast. Now, this episode, quickly off the top, is presented by Reebok Australia. Massive shout out to the guys at Reebok as well. Had an incredible weekend over there in Melbourne. But today's episode, we have got a very, very special guest, one of the Breakers legends, one of the guys at the forefront of the revamp and looking forward to the future as well. I'm speaking of Dillon Boucher. Dillon, mate, welcome to the Basketball Fix, and thank you so much for your time.
Glad to be here, and thank you for the intro. Very kind.
No, definitely, mate. It's a very historical career in terms of everything that you've done for your basketball career. 13, I believe it was, NBL and NZ NBL championships as well combined, which is just an incredible amount. You know success and you know what it takes to have success. And it must be exciting to be back at the Breakers after a couple of years off as well.
Yeah, no, super excited to be back, back in the office, back in the training facility, back, working for a club, as you said, that I've spent many years with and had some good success with. So certainly looking to, the challenge is always to try and get back to those winning ways, and certainly looking forward to the process to go through to try and get back to those days.
Definitely, mate. And you speak of back there and back in the office, back to the organization, but also back in black. And this is something that is got me excited. I loved the jerseys back when you were playing and even a handful of years ago as well, when we saw RJ Hampton rocking around in the New Zealand Breakers jerseys. The blue and the black, there's just something about it that screams New Zealand Breakers. And there's no disrespect to previous ownership groups, but the pink and the different blue and just everything going on, it just didn't really feel like the New Zealand Breakers. So what was the whole decision process essentially to bring it back to black and really have that identity of the New Zealand Breakers back as well?
Yeah, I think anyone that is from New Zealand resonates with black. All of our national team jerseys are black, so the black has got to be synonymous with the brand, and it obviously has a strong history of having black in it as well. And the blue as well, which has been from the inception also. So again, with new ownership coming in, they wanted to really engage with those New Zealand roots, and using that black as the core color was going back to what, again, we've our very famous All Blacks, and the basketball have the Tall Blacks, but most of our national teams play in that black jersey. So really wanting to to use that as the base color. And then build out the colours around it from there.
What's been the reaction? Because everyone I've spoken to has just been ecstatic that you have gone back to the black. And, like we've got a few guys at the Basketball Fix who run a Breakers podcast as well. And they are genuinely excited as well. It just seems like the community has really latched on, and it just feels like as well, they're just happy that it's New Zealand run once again and obviously New Zealand owned.
Yeah, for sure. And the reaction's been amazing. People are coming up to me, walking down the street saying how excited they are, and to really engage with this season. And the colours, it's funny, you get the odd person that goes, "Oh, I love the pink uniforms." But I can tell you the majority do love the fact that we're going to go back to black. And certainly the fans have spoken a lot about wanting to be back in black, and I think that's, for us, they're going to be very happy to see the team in black this year and moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting last season when you wore the black jerseys last year, and you could just see the reactions from around the league. Seeing them walk back out in those jerseys, it was giving me a lot of nostalgia as well. And, it just makes me think back to when the Breakers were a genuine powerhouse. There was years there where it was yourself, the Wildcats, and even the Adelaide 36ers all around the mark as well for so many years. So I am genuinely excited. I'm not a Breakers fan as per se, but I am at the same time as well. I'm a massive fan of those jerseys. I've got a number of Abercrombie jerseys sitting away in my cupboard as well. So excited for the club nonetheless though, mate. But let's get into what this episode is about. And it's all about talking the off-season. And you guys have had an interesting off-season. You said at the start of the off-season that the goal was going to grab as many local New Zealand players as possible. And you've done that in a variety of different ways. You've gone and grabbed some really young talent as well. And then you've also gone and grabbed some experience as well. So what have you made of the off-season so far? And who are a couple of the guys that you may flag that may be in for some good seasons next year?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. I mean, we've got a good mix of probably unknown names to some of the Australian fans out there, and certainly to the New Zealand fans, they won't be unknown from the Cells NBL. But from our perspective, we have tried to get that balance right of guys that have experience, and one of the things that I really wanted to ensure we did was we brought back guys that had experience and understood what it takes to win, understand what it takes to be a BNZ breaker player, but also bring a level of toughness to the group. One of the things that, from a outsider looking in, I looked at the breaker teams of the past and kind of said, what was missing? And I really believe there was a real defensive toughness that was missing. So I wanted to, again, recruit some really tough defensive players that are uncompromising. They come into every game and are ready to, take on any assignment you give them and take it head on. And I think of the likes of, when I think experience, the likes of Rob Lowe and Ruben Sadangi. And again, two very good defenders, very tough defenders, very physically strong defenders. And then you chuck in the mix Isaiah Liafa, who, pound for pound has got to be one of the toughest guys in the league. You see any big that tries to post them up, they struggle, and he's physically got that physicality. He embraces the defensive side of the ball. And then you bring in some of the young or the lesser known names into, like the Carlin Davison, a guy who is, probably could arguably one day be one of the best defenders in the league, has all the tools, all the natural tools. And, we're hoping that we can work with him to really grow that side of the game for him. And he can do some special things on the offensive end too. And then Taylor Britt, who is probably not necessarily known for his defense, but his, I watched an international game with him recently against the Philippines, and he was outstanding defensively. So I know he's really wants to show that side of his game that he's not known for right now. But again, he can do some things on the other side of the ball as well. That a non-ball situation that gives us some options at that point guard spot as well. So just really excited for. Again, those guys who are getting their first opportunity, but also mixing that in with the current players we already have who are good players in their own right. So we believe the mix is good. Are we the best team on paper? No. Are we a team that we think is capable of beating every team in the league? Yes, especially if we can get the import situation right, and then. That goes a long way. For me, it's about getting to the playoffs, and then once you're in the playoffs, it's about who can show up and have the best game plan and be ready to take those series each one individually.
No, definitely, mate. And you speak of game plan there as well. You've got such a dynamic lineup right now, and we'll touch on the imports very shortly as well. But what's the style of play that you guys are looking to play? Is it a faster sort of offense? Is it a more getting into your sets and a patient offense? How do you guys want to play your basketball this season? Because when I look at your roster, it seems like you can play a number of different offenses. You've got the class and experience of Rob Lowe, like you mentioned, who can play inside and out. He's a physical player. Sam Menenga, the exact same. You guys could play 5 out with your lineup. You could also play 5 in, genuinely just because of the strength and the toughness of the team. So what is the game style, and how does that sort of help Coach Patrick Koppinen into NBL26?
Yeah, I think a lot of that will come down to those import spots, and we've obviously got Karim Lopez as another name that we're excited about his development in the off season and loving what he's showing so far before he even arrives here, and we know he's going to be a better player than what he was last year. So again, when the style of play will be determined again by those last 3 spots combined with what we have. And I think to your point, we're going to have several styles we're going to be able to play. And if you play Rob Lowe and Sam Menenga together, they can both shoot the ball. So you can make it 5 guys that can step out, depending on what we go and what we get in that kind of import big spot. And what their capability is, that may change the dynamic of how we're going to play, for the majority of games if they're going to be playing minutes. So, and again, Karim Lopez comes in this year and shoots the ball really well, like he did at the back end of last year, that changes everything again. So, I think he's able to get downhill. He's able to shoot the three. We've got a bunch of guys that can do some things, and then we've got some really good complementary pieces around them. So, I'm probably not answering your question, but in a way, we're going to have several styles we're going to be able to play depending. And we're going to have defensive lineups that we can put out there. They're going to be pretty tough defensively as well.
Yeah, I think that's a positive as well. We've seen it in the NBL in recent seasons. It's depth first and foremost, and the ability to be able to change up mid-game your game style as well. Going from a patient offense to a fast offense, or from a fast offense back to a patient offense, or locking down on defense for a couple of possessions. And that's the most important thing. And I think that's what's the interesting part in the NBL landscape right now is it feels like it has changed. It doesn't feel like rosters are going out there and are trying to make a really solid 8-man rotation. They're trying to find 11, 12 solid players where you can rotate all season long. So it's such an interesting dynamic right now. And to be fair, I love it. I'd love seeing, as much talent as possible in the NBL. I'll be happy very shortly if the league wanted to introduce more teams, because there are just so much talent in the NBL and still outside of the NBL as well. But let's get into that import structure, the last 3 roster spots. There's been a couple of rumblings around, and I'd like to get your opinion on it, and obviously what your guys' thoughts are as well, where there's the 3 import structure, going out and grabbing 3 genuine imports, or there's the 2 import with the marquee spot on top of it. Has that been floated at all? And what sort of structure are you guys mainly leading towards right now?
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, if we could nail a marquee player, we would love to. There's some good talented marquee players out there. Right now, as it stands, we're looking at 3 imports, but that doesn't mean we would rule out a marquee player if one became available or one was presented to us that we thought was able to do the job that we needed them to do. So, we have talked. We talked around. We've had a couple of players that we've had in mind that we've approached in different areas, but for us right now, it is really focusing on those 3 imports right this minute. If I was to give you an answer right now, but someone may watch this podcast and be like, I've got someone that you need to look at. So that could change very quickly.
I guess there's one name that instantly pops to my head when we speak of the local marquee player. He's a former breaker. He played for the Wildcats last season. It's Ty Webster. Is he a guy that there was any thought of early on in the piece to potentially bring him over for NBL26 as a marquee player or a roster spot player as well?
Yeah, certainly, absolutely. We've had chats with his agent, and he was on the radar very early. And I know Ty well, and have a great relationship with Ty, and love his personality and things like that. So absolutely, we've had those conversations. Did the conversations go anywhere? We chatted about them, but they didn't actually eventuate into anything, and that's all right right now. But he's just come off having a fantastic season in France and complementing his season with the Wildcats. So I've no doubt that he's going to end up, with either an NBL team or end up back in Europe.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Now, I guess there's a couple of burning questions with the import structure. I guess we'll kick it off with one of the guys who was signed to, it was a 2-year deal, but it could have been a 1 year deal. I'm not 100% sure. I'd like to get some clarification off of you on this as well, because there just isn't a much information out there. And I speak of Taco Fall. So is he going to be returning for NBL26, or is he going to be pursuing other opportunities?
Yeah, we're just working through all his with his agent at the moment. So he is under a 2-year contract with the club. So we're just working with his agent at the moment on what that looks like and what we need for that spot. So if you can give me a bit of time in this space, we'll eventually have an answer on that. But right now, we're just working through it all.
Definitely, it's going to be an interesting one. And one more as well. He's one of the favourites in the NBL. He's a dynamic player. At the peak of his powers, he is arguably the best player in the competition. There's no question about it. Parker Jackson-Cartwright, I believe he's just finished his season overseas, potentially. May have a couple more games. He's currently playing in the finals over there as well. Is he a guy who is potentially more than likely going to be coming back. There was obviously rumours that he seems to be the perfect fit for the Breakers. You guys have got a genuine interest in him. So can you give us a little bit of an update on Parker Jackson-Cartwright?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you're exactly right. I think he's one of the best players in the league, if not the best player. Obviously it's tough to go anyone to go against Bryce Cotton with what he did last season, but I know Parker Jackson-Cartwright is motivated to be the best player in the league, and he's certainly the last 2 seasons here I've had the luxury of watching him week in, week out perform for the BNZ Breakers. So do we want him back? 100%. And are we trying to do everything we can to bring him back? 100%. And we're working with his agent daily. He is in the middle of playoffs at the moment, so we're letting him try and win a championship in Lithuania, and as soon as that he's either cutting that net down or unsuccessful, we'll be right back on the phone with his agent and trying to just close this thing out. So we 100%, he is for us, he's number one on our radar, and if we're unsuccessful, then we'll look elsewhere. But right now, our sights are fully set on trying to re-sign him for next season.
Oh, that gets me excited. It's just awesome having returning talent to the NBL, and someone of his magnitude, I just think works incredibly well with your offense. So Breakers fans, fingers crossed, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that one get over the line after he does finish up overseas as well. But what is the structure right now? When you look at your roster, do you see you guys attacking obviously a point guard, potentially a shooting guard and a center, or is it a small forward, power forward combination? What are you sort of looking at right now when you think of what this roster may just need as some top-up players for the imports?
Yeah, so again, what we'd be looking for is a point guard, and then obviously the second import spot would be a shooting guard, but also probably more of a combo that's able to play on the ball as well. And for having, so if you've got 2 imports that can handle the ball and play on the ball, it's very helpful. And then obviously you've got like I said, the talents of Karim Lopez on the wing, that's able to be able to do what he can do in many different situations. And then we'll be looking for I guess you would call it an athletic 4, but again, for us, we want to have a 4-man that can guard the best 4-man in the league, but also is able to give us some rim protection and really finish above the rim as well. We're lucky, we're fortunate that our bigs that we have under our current roster can both really shoot the ball, or can all, and you add in Max Darling to that mix, and he shot the ball well last year as well. We've got the luxury of the likes of Ruben Tarangi is able to step in and play some 4 if need be, and so we feel like the shooting side of it is pretty good in our current roster. So we're not going to be necessarily looking for a pick and pop 4, but if they can shoot the 3, that's a bonus. I think for us, we really need a guy who can get on the rim and do some things at the rim, and also can probably do some things off the dribble. So looking for probably like an athletic 4. If again, some of the conversations I've been having already with different agents, there's some talented bigs out there that if we can get a really talented big that maybe can't do all of those things but can do some other things, then that starts playing into your dynamic as well. Is again, as you talked about, if you've got 5 guys that can really shoot the ball from the outside, like it becomes pretty tough to guard. But at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice points in the paint as well on getting a whole bunch of dudes who just like to pick and pop.
You've got me excited, mate. I just think this team is like a couple of pieces away from exploding. And I mean that wholeheartedly. When you look at the club, the roster, what you guys are building, it's so incredibly solid. And like you mentioned, it has gone under the radar for a lot of the off season. And again, like you mentioned, it's probably just due to the fact that people don't know these names as well as the local Australian players. So I'm genuinely excited. I've got one last name, and we'll just round out the 3 imports from last season. Is Matt Mooney on the radar? Have you had contract talks with him? Is he a chance to potentially return to NBL26? Because he seems like, again, a perfect sort of combination piece with Parker. They started to get it going late in the season. You speak about, the shooting guard potentially being able to hold the ball and run the offense as well. Matt showed that at certain stages as well. So is there any interest or mutual interest for him coming back next season?
In all honesty, I haven't spoken to Matt, haven't spoken to him at all. But again, from an outsider looking in, I thought there were the times Matt Mooney was fantastic for the Breakers, and he had a pretty good season with I guess a few ups and downs throughout the season. But I think if you look at his numbers, he actually performed pretty well. I haven't had the conversation with him yet. Will I have the conversation with him? It would probably be a conversation, is he interested in coming back? And again, what we're doing is compiling a list of names right now in different positions, and sitting down with the coaching staff and working through those names. Will his name be on the list? No doubt it will be. So for us, we've like literally, if you could see my other tabs on my computer screen right now, we've got lists and lists of guys we're working through and speaking with agents daily, compiling what those players are and deep diving into what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what are they like as people, how will they fit in, how will they complement our group. And that's for me, you talk about getting excited. That's what gets me excited when I start doing that side of the business. And, for me, that's a really exciting time for the club to be able to really try and nail the inputs. And, we've seen it with every team. Sometimes you nail it. Some guys just suit the style of play that the NBL has, and others don't. Some guys that come out as super talented, but just don't seem to fit into the style of play. And then others that you get for, I think back to a guy like DJ Newbill when we recruited him. We recruited him, we really liked him. He really got to the NBL and thrived, and now he's been back-to-back MVP of the Japanese League, and really doing it. So, where is another guy like that? Who's the next DJ Newbill coming through that you can find that maybe people don't know about yet? Maybe they're straight out of college, or maybe they've had one season at a lower level and maybe haven't performed, or have gone to a higher level and not played much. Those are all the things you got to balance up, and that's the stuff that I love, is really deep diving into those players.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one because there are just so many talented players out there. Like we saw even just in the NBL last season, so many. I don't think we've seen it for a long, long time, but so many first-year imports just coming in and dominating. Kendrick Davis is the one that comes to mind straight away, and that gets me excited once again. The NBL is at a point where it's still in a growth phase, but it's one of the best teams in the world, leagues in the world, I should say, as well. So that's enough of the grilling questions there, mate. I'm looking forward to allowing you guys to continue to be patient and what you guys are going to achieve. But I want to get a couple of thoughts on some of these young guys coming through. I'm, like I said, genuinely excited about a few of them. And you speak of Karim Lopez, and we'll start there. He looks like he's set for another incredible season. He's in his draft year coming up, which is just crazy. He played last season as a 17, 18-year-old, I believe. He's coming into his 18-year-old season this year. So, what can this kid be? He just seems to have... I'd love to get a bit more of an insight on him. He seems like he's got a great head on his shoulder. I know his father's over there with him majority of the time as well. He just seems like he is the ultimate professional at such a young age.
He's definitely plays well beyond his years. He's almost plays like a vet the way he plays. I think you ask what his ceiling is. I don't think he has a ceiling right now. And I think that's what excites NBA teams about him, is he's got this, he's got so much potential. You look at just his frame alone, and he's put on some muscle already in the off season, and so we're expecting him to come back stronger. He's really working on his game as we speak. So we know he's going to be improved in a lot of different areas. So we're excited to really help him develop as a player, and hopefully become a top 10 draft pick next year. And that's the goal, is to really develop him the best we can to help him go on to bigger and better things. And this will just be a stopping part in his journey as a basketball player. And we're just grateful that we're going to have, for me, 1 year, but the club having 2 years with a talent like this on our shores. And I really hope the fans of both in New Zealand and Australia understand how good this kid is. He's good, man. And I was impressed with him last season, and I'm looking forward to him making strides forward this season as well.
Yeah, I love it, mate. I think he's the future of Mexico basketball as well, which they just absolutely get around him. It's incredible to see the support that he's got, not just over here, but around the world. He's a genuine star, and he'll be a top 10 pick for sure. And I think that's obviously one thing that you guys have done very well. Is you've been very good with the NBL Next Star program. You've had a plethora of players come through your doors and go on to be drafted in the NBA at a high level as well. So, yeah, massive credit to the New Zealand Breakers organisation there as well. But this guy is one of my favourite players in the NBL. If there was a guy who I could go and I was wanting to start a team, for example, he'd be one of the local guys I'd be going after straight away, and it's Sam Menenga. What can we expect from him? Because we saw glimpses at the start of the season of him really having a breakout season. He then had that towards the back end of the season. He can play inside, outside, rebound, solid defender. You've got to be excited about the prospect of Sam Menenga for NBL26.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even more so, what he's doing in Puerto Rico right now is playing well in Puerto Rico. So he's continued on that great form from last season. We're excited to have him back. I've known Sam for a long, long time, since his, early kind of high school years. So I've watched his development, and this kid works, man. He works hard, and he works hard on his body. He works hard on his game. So everything that's come to him is through hard work, and we're excited for what he's able to do in this upcoming season. We know he's had 2 years in the league. He understands the league. He understands the players. He understands who he can dominate. And I think when you start knowing that and you start targeting, games that you're going to go at that person or whatever. And he's a super confident guy too. So had a good college career at Davidson. And, so I think he's primed and ready to have a really breakout season this season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to him versus Montrezl Harrell. I'm sure you've seen the clips. Sorry, I'm just waking up here as well. But massive sort of moment there with him over in Puerto Rico. So I'm looking forward to that matchup, and I hope he's got that circled in his calendar as well. But the last one I want to mention is Carlin Davidson. You spoke about him there. Like, I've been watching the Sales NBL, and he had a couple of triple doubles early on. He is an athletic freak. You can play him at point guard. You can play him at the three. You could do so much with him. Like, for people at home that don't know how good this guy is, can he be, like, he could genuinely be a starter at some points of this season, I feel like, for you guys. I just think he's an incredible talent. And for people out there who don't necessarily know who he is or don't necessarily know his game style, can you give us a bit of an insight? Because this kid's got it all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for Carlin. He's always had this super talented tag. He's starting to really dominate the New Zealand NBL. He's starting to shoot the ball better, but we haven't seen an athlete like him since, Tom Abercrombie. Tom Abercrombie, when he first, came into the national team camps and stuff, and we were like, man, this kid can really jump. Well, Carlin has, I don't want to say more athleticism, but more powerful athleticism. Carlin is trying to, he's trying to take you and dunk you with the ball. So he's got power with his dunks, and he's probably more of an explosive athlete than what Tom was. Tom more floated in the air, whereas Carlin just, he's power athlete. Again, he's having a great season. What people don't understand is he's got a great instinctive basketball game. Like, I don't know if you've seen any of his passes. He can throw some passes that others can't. He sees things that others can't. Yep. He plays off an instinctive kind of natural ability. And when I look at him, I look at a guy like Dave O'Hickey and the impact that he had for Illawarra, and I think Carlin is in that same mold where we can give him some opportunities this season, and he'll probably make some mistakes out there, and he'll probably do some things that that the coaches will have to chat to him after the game about, as far as, he is a bit wild at times with, some of his passes or some of his attempted dunks or whatever it might be, but you don't want to curb that. That's the thing that makes him special. And so for me, he's the guy that we look at and go, he has some X factor that you can't teach in people. And, I think there's an ability for him to be able to, again, come in and make an impact this season, but continue developing in the background where no one's going to see him. He's going to be working on his game in the background, and certainly having, guys like Ruben Tarangi around him to being able to, help him and develop his game. And, Ruben has really evolved as a player from when he was a youngster. And I think Carlin's in that same mold. I think he has potential to be a starter in this league and may even be able to go on beyond the NBL and be, going further afield. He has again, when you talk about NBA athleticism, he has NBA athleticism. Like he has that, and there's not many guys in the NBL that you would say have NBA athleticism, but he has it.
Yeah, he definitely does. I'm super excited at the prospect of him for NBL26. I think when you guys signed him, that was one of the guys who I mentioned it to a few people. I just said, go and have a look at this kid. Just go watch his NZNBL, the Sales NBL highlights, and just watch, like you said, the athleticism, the play style, the IQ as well. And you speak of, the not wanting to curve the sort of athleticism and some of the mistakes that he is going to make, because that is some of the best part of his game as well, going for the ridiculous posters and the funny passes and the funky passes, I should say, there as well. So I'm excited, mate. But once again, I really appreciate you jumping on today's show. I really appreciate the transparency as well. I think all Breakers fans are genuinely excited for what NBL 26 could be. And, if you can nail down a couple of these signings and really nail them as well when it comes to import spots, I think this team can genuinely have no cap where it could potentially end in NBL 26. So a massive credit to yourself and the whole organisation, mate. And back in black 26 is going to be very exciting for the New Zealand Breakers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on. And, I just love chatting hoops, and especially if it's chatting, BNZ Breaker hoops, I love it even more. So always good to chat.
No, definitely, mate. I'll have to have you back on potentially before the start of the season as well, and we'll get some of your expectations and everything like that when the roster's fully set and they're all over there in New Zealand as well, mate. But thank you very much for jumping on today's show, and I look forward to catching up with you very shortly.
No, awesome, man. Good chatting.
Thanks, mate.